Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Committee of Adjustments. This is a meeting to consider applications for minor variance and consents held under the authority of the Planning Act of Ontario. Please keep in mind the intent of this process is to review the proposal that is before us, listen to the evidence, and then make a decision. This process is not intended to be used to resolve any concerns or disputes that may exist between the town, individuals, or organizations. If a request for a deferral is made and the committee grants such a request, the committee, after consultation with the Secretary-Treasurer, will set a new hearing date. No further notice will be provided unless there are changes to the application. In order to conduct an effective and efficient hearing, we have adopted the following process. The owner or authorized agent will be given the opportunity, if so desired, to briefly explain to us the basis of the application, answer any questions that may arise out of the hearing. A maximum of 5 minutes will be provided for this presentation. You need to state your name, address for the record, and any materials submitted to the committee for viewing will remain the property of this committee. Any submissions beyond the 5 minutes will be at the discretion of the committee. All persons attending the hearing who wish to support or oppose the application must also state their full name and address for the record. A maximum of 5 minutes will be provided to make your presentation. All remarks and questions are to be directed to the chairperson of the committee. Any submissions beyond the 5 minutes will be at the discretion of the committee. If there are several speakers sharing the same point of view, please select a spokesperson to present the group's opinion. We do want to hear everyone's views. However, covering the same points will not advance your case. The owner or agent will then be provided with a further 5 minutes to respond to the comments made by any interested parties and answer any questions from the committee members. If the owner or agent has any concerns found in staff reports, particularly with the proposed conditions, this would be the opportunity to advise us. The matter will then be taken into committee for a decision, and that will mark end of all discussions. Once the committee makes an oral decision, any person desiring a copy must file with the Secretary-Treasurer at the meeting a written request for notice of the decision. A grease sheet is provided for this purpose in the back of the room. Please note that you must make a written request in order to be included on the list that is used by the local planning appeal tribunal for the giving of any subsequent notice of any appeal. Written notice of the committee's decision will be mailed no later than 10 days for minor variances and 15 days for consent to the applicant, the owner and/or agent, and any other person who has filed a written request for such notice. If you do not agree with the committee's decision, you may appeal this to the local planning appeal tribunal. The last date to appeal the decision to the LPAT will be noted on the decision. If no appeal is received within the prescribed time frame, the decision of the committee becomes final and binding, and the Secretary-Treasurer will then notify the applicant through written correspondence. People attending this committee are asked to be courteous and respectful of all members of the committee, town staff, and other people in attendance tonight. Tonight's meeting will be video recorded and available for future viewing on the town's YouTube channel. We do ask that you maintain your cellular phones off or silent, as they do disrupt the meeting and they do tend to interfere with the audio system. Thank you. And with this, we'll start our meeting. Regrets for this evening, I see none. Does anyone have a declaration of pecuniary interest? I see none, thank you. At this time, I'd like to take any requests for deferral, withdrawal of applications. Is there anyone here who desires to? Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Bill Hicks with Hicks Design Studios, here on behalf of 3 applications tonight, but the first one for Brookfield Crescent. We're going to seek a deferral. We had submitted our application to the committee, believing that there was a new bylaw coming into effect. We would typically be going through the site plan approval process. We had attended one pre-consult meeting. We have another pre-consult meeting set up for approximately a week and a half from now. So we'd like to defer, but I wouldn't have a specific date. I'm not sure if we can do it sine die until we go through the site plan application process, or certainly through 80% of it. So.
Very well, thank you, Ms. Hicks. Let me just canvass the room for attendance for this application. Who is here for CAV 080 of 2018 for 154 Brookfield Crescent? A show of hands, please. Thank you. Are you here in opposition or in support?
Opposition.
Very well, thank you. And you're in support. Thank you. We do have some letters of objection on hand that were submitted. We do appreciate your coming to the meeting and showing your concerns. However, as you've heard Mr. Hicks, they are still going to be participating in a site planning process, and that will show some changes. Despite you coming down and giving us your time, the committee is inclined to hear the request for a deferral. I'm assuming that if we do grant such a request, that you would be all in favor of that, considering that it is to better the applications. Can I show of hands of how everyone feels is in support? Perfect. Thank you. So, do I have any questions for Mr. Hicks, Mr. Telawski?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Hicks, you said you want to go through the site plan process or at least 80% of it. So does that mean it's your intention to come back to the committee with variances prior to going 100% through the site plan process?
There will definitely be some variances. We're not sure of the exact nature of those. There may be some redesign required through that site plan process, so we're not comfortable with applying for variances now. That may specifically change.
Okay.
But we would usually go through that extent of the site plan process to determine if there's any other technical issues that are going to change something with the design of the house. And we certainly welcome having a discussion with the neighbors. To be honest, we, as we always do, we submit notes to all of the neighbors. I just received 2 letters of opposition on Friday. We have not been contacted by anybody, but I'd be happy to meet with the entire group as we expressed in our letter, but no one has actually contacted me.
Mr. Hicks, take a look around. Show your hands of all these people who've just showed up, and perhaps when you leave, Mr. Hicks can have a conversation with you outside and you can relate your concerns with him, and that's a very good opportunity to get both sides talking. Thank you.
Agreed. So.
Any further questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just Mr. Hicks, I won't speak for the rest of the committee, but speaking for myself, I do have some serious concerns with what's in front of me tonight, and I don't want you to go away today that my vote in favor of a deferral is in any way a support of coming back from site plan with exactly the same application as we have here tonight.
Recognize Mr. Telawski, and dealt with a lot of these large estate properties. They are always controversial, and I expect there will be changes. And some of them may be substantial. So.
Any other questions of Mr. Hicks at this time? I see none. Okay, the motion to defer is, sorry, I need a motion to defer. Okay, Mr. Hardcastle. All those in support of the deferral? Okay, Mr. Hicks, your deferral has been granted. Thank you. You can see Mr. Hicks on your way out, sir, and you can have a discussion with him with all the things that with respect to all your concerns.
Madam Chair, may I submit a letter?
Oh, absolutely.
It's done for today, but tell them they'll be recirculated when it comes back.
So the recirculation of this item will come about again, and you will be among the people who were notified, just as you were notified today. At that time, you can submit your letter, and it will go on the new application that will be filed. Since the application is not going to be read, or seen further from today, we start a whole new process when the application comes before us again, and that will be the best time for you to submit your letter. You're welcome, sir. Thank you. Case. Are there any other deferrals or requests for deferrals? I see none. So we'll proceed with the next application on our agenda tonight, and that will be CAV 081 of 2018 at 517 Viner Crescent. Good evening. Name and address for the record, please.
Good evening, Madam Chair. My name is Krzysztof Olak from OM Architecture. I'm representing my client, owner of 517 Viner Crescent.
Thank you, Mr. Olick. Who is here for application CAV 081 of 2018 at 517 Viner Crescent? Show of hands, please. Okay, I see none. Sir, your application is for a two-story addition at the rear, addition to an existing building. We do have some letters of support. Feel free to give us a presentation. We've done our site visits. We are familiar with the application. This is your time to take us through if you should desire. Are there any questions of Mr. Olick at this time? I see none. If there is nothing further that you'd like to add, we can take this matter into committee since our bylaw allows for that.
Sure. So all I wanted to mention is that we did review this with the staff. We agree with the staff condition, and we're happy to hear that we have a support. We also have, as you know, support from almost all the neighbors around. And I'm looking forward to your decision.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Olick. So this matter is in committee. Can I have a recommendation? Mr. Charlebois, thank you.
Yes, Madam Chair. Having conducted my site visit and reviewed the applicant's written submission as well as the town's written staff report, which I note that staff is in support of this particular request, and taking into account that there's no one here in the public either providing written or oral objections or support. Actually, I should note that there is one letter of support that was part of our file. I'm prepared to make a motion that these variances be accepted as presented, subject to two conditions. The proposed additions be constructed in general accordance with the plans dated May 4, 2018 as submitted, and further to the condition that this approval will expire 2 years from this date if a building permit's not issued.
Thank you, Mr. Charlebois. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved. Thank you, Mr. Olick.
Thank you very much.
The next application is CAV 082 of 2018 at 297 William Street. CAV 082 for 297 William Street. Good
Madam
evening.
Chairman.
Your name and address for the record, please. You're here for William Street, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
My name is Louis Battiston. I'm acting as agent for Pamela and Don Kirkland. And what we're doing is we're basically applying for a building permit to put a sunroom in the rear yard.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. Are you the only one present here? Is there anyone else here for 297 William Street?
Yes.
Yes. Are you in opposition
We're
or in
the
support?
owners.
You're the owners. Very well. Thank you. Mr. Baxton, the town staff is not in support of your application, so we're going to require you to take us through your application, and then we can ask you questions and
Sure.
proceed from there.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
No
Go
pro-
ahead, sir.
It's no problem at all. First of all, let me say that this is a heritage home, and before we started any of this, we went to the Heritage Committee and got their input to start off. We do realize we have to apply hopefully after this is approved. So we'll keep that in mind. There's basically, well, let's start with the two variances, or the three variances. The first one is the zero setback. In the report, it said that the staff did talk to me about that. In all honesty, I don't remember them mentioning it to me, and I am in total agreement with the staff. We cannot build on a zero. We have to go, other semis that we've built on, we can work with 1.5 feet, which is 14, but we'll gladly give 600 as a setback instead of that zero. That's 2 whole feet, and that answers the question that the staff had in case the applicant proposes to construct a sunroom very close to the property and will not be providing sufficient space to carry out general maintenance, eaves, walls to support in that. And 2 feet or 600 is more than enough that we need. And I'm in total agreement with the staff report on that. And should should we be allowed to proceed in here, that would be stated right on, we'll sign off on that for sure. The items 2 and 3 are sort of similar in nature. And it's a little bit confusing here to me, even though they say it's not compatible up there. If I could read the things, this is legal non-conforming, and the expectations that legal non-conforming using building structures cease over time and replace usages of building structures that conform to the zoning bylaw official plan. However, special circumstances are appropriate to consider the extension of larger non-conforming uses. For further establish that the town will protect and conserve the resources, etc., and it's staff's opinion that enlargement of the legal non-conforming heritage resources maintain the intent of the official plan. So that's a little, didn't quite understand what all that sort of came about. So what we did, we went to visit each of the neighboring properties, both sides and rear. We showed them what was going to be done, and in here I brought signed letters confirming that they have absolutely no objections whatsoever to having this done. If the fear, and I don't, it's, give that. Okay, all right. Yeah, and Don would basically like to talk about the reasons why they want a sunroom.
Can you state your name and address for the record, please? I understand you're the owners. It's just, it's procedure.
Owner. My wife Pam is there. Just wanted to say that, you know, we love our house. We've been living in Oakville for 45 years, but it's dark. And the main reason that it's dark is on the south side, the heritage, in those days they had big porches, and we'd love to have some more light, and this is the only way we can really get to get more light. And we're not getting any younger. My wife Pam is handicapped, and it's probably the only way we'll really be able to, as we go older, get some light inside the house. We have Heritage Oakville has been to the house and has supported our application, subject to all the necessary approvals. I think that was all. Yeah, we have a very pretty backyard, and this is the only way we'll be able to really enjoy it outside of the summer. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions of Mr. Baston at this time?
Sure.
Yeah, just a couple of questions. You mentioned that the next door neighbors had no objections. Does that include the neighbor that's part of this semi?
Yeah.
Okay.
The green dot is the
last page.
Is the unit, and the other ones are those statements.
All right.
So they're aware of how tight that space is going to be in terms of your renovations.
Yep.
And I'm going to ask two other questions. When I was there, I noticed that in front of 295, there was a sign talking about redevelopment. It looked like a sunroom. Are they doing a sunroom also? Is that
I don't know anything about that one.
yeah?
No, the sign is in
Oh,
front
sorry.
of 297. It's a semi. It's,
Yeah, no, it just looked like it was in front of 295, so I was starting to think
Oh,
about it
sorry.
because, and
No,
this will be my
oh,
last.
Okay, I know. There's a lot of internal work being done in that.
Okay,
in
all
that.
right, so that's what it, because my last point was going to be that, not to say that any granting of approval here would allow your neighbor to grant, but, you know, it would be then possible perhaps for them to come forward and say they want a sunroom, which may defeat some of your,
well, in fact, our neighbor has said if this is a success, she might consider doing it herself.
yeah, so there goes your son again.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, that was it. Thank you.
So all we're asking for is the existing design, except with a setback of 2 feet.
Actually, I do have one more question.
Oh, sure.
So this is directed at you, sir. You were saying that,
Yeah.
without really saying it, you're essentially saying you wanted to modify the
I
first
wanted to
variance.
yes, because there's no way that I can build right on the line, and I missed it, and I don't remember the staff showing it to me.
Okay.
Because I would have agreed with them to move it. So
Hmm.
anything that we have will be roughly 2 feet or 600 millimeters, basically, from the lot line.
And the reason we can't go any further is that there's a staircase in the way,
Yeah.
and the doorway just cannot be moved more than 2 feet.
Yeah. Plus, the sunroom itself is roughly 13 feet wide, and we have a 15-foot wall, so we can move it 2 feet this way. If we move it any further, we're going to be outside of
The other setback.
2 feet. We've done numerous semi-detached homes. We really only need a foot and a half to accomplish this, but here we can accommodate 2 feet, so we're going to go with 2 feet on that.
So I'm going to direct a question, obviously, at staff. I have no idea whether 2 feet is appropriate in your mind. Perhaps you could talk to that?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the committee, I don't know if 2 feet can be accommodated. Based on the plans that have been submitted to staff today, it is showing a 0 lot line where the new structure interfaces with the existing structure. The property line kind of tapers off, so there's about a few inches there. However, the discussions that staff have been with Mr. Kirkwood directly, not his agent, so that's probably why there's some confusion around where the comments are coming from. And through our discussions with Mr. Kirkwood, we've gone through various scenarios that this could be provided, and this was not our preferred scenario because of the issue with the maintenance on the eaves. If the applicant is willing to be able to demonstrate that that there can be an accommodation of 2 feet here, that might change the discussion with staff in terms of the appropriateness of these types of variances to expand a legal non-conforming use. Until those plans can be provided to us, I'm not in a position to say that that works, because right now I'm not seeing a door move 2 feet. We've been told the door has to stay where it is, hence various scenarios. So if now the door can be shifted, staff would benefit from seeing that information, and perhaps it's premature to consider a decision tonight, and maybe the applicant wishes to seek a deferral in the interim to make revisions to their plans.
Can I comment on that?
Absolutely.
There just didn't seem to be, talking to the town, beg its pardon, that we could accept, the only thing we could do would be to build the sunroom totally independent of the house with no access in through from the main house. And that was really, this is the best we can do to accommodate the town as well as our own selves.
And based on the staff report, the only objection is that we don't have enough space to maintain or this, and that's a lot of space, the 2 meters, or not 2 meters, sorry, the 2 feet. We built, like I said, up to a foot and a half and still had enough room to work and accommodate everything, but here we can accommodate 2 feet or 600 millimeters and without any issue, but we can't accommodate any more because it would push us outside in there. For me, that part of it answers. Oh, sorry. That part answers the concern that the city has, and I'll gladly sit down with the city people and show that it's there. The problem I had is I didn't see this until Friday. And I got it late Friday, and it was too late to submit anything in to the city to change this. Whether we're at 0 or at 600, we still need a variance because there's a 2.4. So to me, since I couldn't get anything in there, I was hoping to come here and explain what's happened with the proviso that we will go to the city or the town, sorry, to the town and explain exactly what happened, and that we are in full agreement with them.
I think what I'm hearing from staff, it becomes a technical issue. Not to put any words in anybody's mouth, but what I got from listening to staff here was they were certainly open to discussing that with you, and perhaps it would work, but it becomes a technical thing that they can't answer. Is 2 feet enough? Does it have to be 2 feet 1 inch? I don't know.
And I understand that.
So, I mean, what I would do perhaps is pick up on what the town mentioned, which was, maybe the suggestion would be that you simply defer this for a couple of weeks. You go and talk to them and realign it, because one of the difficulties we'll have as a committee, just so you know, is that when we approve these variances, we approve them fairly exactly, and we approve them in accordance with the drawings. And I don't have a set of drawings that show this 2 feet, so it gets very difficult to put into words. And in fact, you may find that you'll end up having to come back anyway because the building permit people won't accept it. Building permit.
That's fair enough.
A suggestion, and it's yours to take, or you can ask for a ruling. But a suggestion might be to say, why don't we just defer this? We'll redraw it. We'll submit it to the town. Ideally, get them to write a favorable staff report.
And I think that's what we'll do then.
Okay.
I'm not going to disagree with you. Can we?
Absolutely.
To the next meeting.
You've got to come forward, ma'am. Just sorry about that. Yeah.
Sorry, ma'am. The procedure is that you have to address the committee, and we can't take comments from the audience, despite our knowledge that you are the owner.
Hi, I'm Pam Kirkwood, the co-owner of the house.
Yeah.
Is that on? Yeah.
Yes.
So the deferral question that you just asked in terms of how long, it's really it's up to your representative to get all the paperwork submitted to the Secretary Treasurer so that she can get you on the next meeting if there's availability. So I don't know when that would be.
Just to advise, once the agent submits the new drawings, there is a deferral fee of $666 as well that's applicable. But once the fee and the new requests and any new drawings are submitted, they're scheduled for the next available Committee of Adjustment meeting. At this point, we're at July 24th.
Okay. It just seems to be continuously being put off.
Madam Chair, can I ask a question of the committee?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Is it not possible to approve this subject to increasing the setback to 2 feet?
I'm not really sure. If you want to make an amendment to the variances, and we typically don't do that, but staff has to support it, and we need drawings to be submitted in order for them to support that. And I don't think they're going to make a recommendation to support it without the drawings, as Mr. Shalaba said, that you have to get all the necessary drawings in before we can take that matter and make a suggestion or make a ruling to accept the application.
Okay, thank you very much.
So is it my understanding that you are going to request a deferral?
Well, absolutely.
Okay, so in future, if you do come before the committee again, or there are other applications, if you do receive the comments on Friday and you have question marks, or you have a desire to speak to them, or it's not favorable, whatever the situation may be, what we urge you to do is consider the deferral ahead of time so that we can take it within the correct procedural parameter when we ask for the deferrals.
It's just.
And I understand,
Yeah,
your situation,
no,
and
I understand totally what you're saying. I've been to other cities and doing the same thing, and I found that things like this have happened before, and it's actually written in the ruling. Let's say you approve this ruling. This ruling is approved based on this condition being added to it, and nothing's had to be done after the fact. But it's okay. I can defer it, and we can put in the drawings that we need.
okay. So the request for deferral, Mr. Telawski, I missed you, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I actually have a question for staff. Okay, for the benefit of the applicant, all the discussion tonight's been about the 2-foot side yard. The staff report seems to have a fundamental problem with the expansion of the legal non-conforming use. And I'd hate to have the applicant walk away from this discussion thinking he moves it 2 feet and they can make it work. Staff support it. Excuse me, sir, I'm talking. Sir,
sorry.
I'm asking a question. Thank you. We've got a historic area where nothing's the same, a semi and a heritage neighborhood. So this use can't go away. You can't tear down half a semi, you probably can't tear down the house in the heritage district. And the staff report makes the comment that the expansion is not similar to the existing use, and I would disagree with that. But I guess my question is do staff have a significant issue with the expansion of the use, or is the primary concern that of the application as it was submitted had a 0 side yard setback?
Through you, Madam Chair, we recognize that the expansion of the use is to expand on a legal non-conforming use, which is why there's commentary with respect to our official plan policies that speak to the special circumstances to maintain legal nonconformities in certain situations. When tested against the section of the Act that this particular application is made under, we have to speak to looking at the built form and the appropriateness of that expansion as well. In this instance, the appropriateness is being gauged on whether or not the expansion can be maintained in the way that it was originally intended. These semi-detached dwellings are evenly matched on that particular common wall, leaving the opportunity for maintenance on all other 3 walls. There presents a conflict in the way that the particular expansion is being proposed. If the applicant can demonstrate that there is an ability to provide for the adequate separation and maintenance in that area, staff may be inclined to better recognize the appropriateness of that expansion in this regard. But without a set of plans to demonstrate that that's possible, all of the history and information that I have to date would tell me that that has not been an option, that the door cannot be shifted, that the addition cannot be placed at 0.6 of a meter from the property line. So until such time as the applicant is able to provide that information to staff to verify that that is the intended approach, and committee is now provided with a set of plans that could reflect a decision in that way, my suggestion would be that a deferral is an appropriate step at this time.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful for me, and I assume very helpful for the applicant.
Okay, Mr. Baxton. So the request for a deferral, do I have a motion for deferral? Mr. Telawski, thank you. All those in support of the deferral? Okay, your application has been approved.
Thank you.
Sorry, deferred. Yes, I'll get you the letters back. Okay. Application CAV 083 of 2018 at 485 English Rose Lane. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Ivers Koulidis from 25 Minnicott Avenue, Scarborough, in Toronto.
Thank you, Mr. Koulidis. Is there anyone here for application CAV 083 at 485 English Rose Lane?
That is correct.
You are in opposition or in support? Opposition. Okay, thank you. And yourself, ma'am? Opposition, thank you. Sorry, give me one moment. You're representing the owner, right? Is Mr.
Right.
Koulidis? Okay, so can you repeat your address again, sir?
25 Minnicott Avenue, Scarborough, in Toronto.
Minnicott. Who do you work for, sir?
Lifestyle Sunrooms.
He does work for Lifestyle Sunrooms.
Yes? Well, it's got another number on my I'll get one in my wife's car before I leave.
Okay, Mr. Koulidis. As you are aware, again, this is another sunroom addition before us, that staff is not in support. So we'll hear your presentation and then we'll give the neighbors a chance to share their concerns as well.
As you see,
And if you'd be kind enough to just speak into the mic, it just makes a lot easier for the recording.
as you see, we have two minor variance requests, and we're hoping that you can recognize them and approve them. I didn't realize that there was that kind of opposition, because when I talked to the owner on several occasions, she said everything was fine, and the neighbors were okay with it. I'm surprised that they're not, so that's...
Fine, these things happen. People
Yeah.
do decide to come to the meeting and share their concerns then, and that's why we give everyone the opportunity to speak, and you'll be able to answer their questions once they've posed their concerns.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Go ahead. It's your turn right now. You have to present your application to the town. So basically, if you, sorry, to the committee members, if you can go through the variances, how you came about them, any reasons you might have. We are familiar with the application, but this is your time should you choose to use it.
Well, we're asking for a rear yard setback and also maximum residential floor area approval, as you see on the application. So there's not much I can change right now. That's what we require, and we leave it up to the committee and yourself.
Are there any questions of Mr. Koulidis at this time? Okay, sir, I see none. We'll invite your neighbors to share their concerns, and then we'll give you another opportunity.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, sir. Your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, good evening, Madam Chair, and my name is Imad Al-Mashat of 489 English Rose Lane. My wife and I, we own this property which is next to the proposed construction. Just a quick comment on what I heard earlier. We were never told that there is such a project coming until I received from the committee this notice, and then I started digging out the matter. When my wife and I came to Oakville and bought this house 4 years back, what attracted us mainly is this rear open area on the whole block of buildings, once you are in the garden, in the rear garden, it's open all the way because all the houses have similar retreat from the fences. I believe that such a construction will not only take part of the green, which is supposed to be kept for all of us, but the height of the project will be also with the roof and everything. It may be more than the 12 foot. So it will block our garden. It will affect badly on even the sunlight. So I believe that this is against our interest to have such thing approved of.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Al-Mashat. Do you have any questions, gentlemen, for Mr. Al-Mashat at this time? I see none. Have you completed your submission, sir?
Yes, I guess so. Thank you.
I'll give the lady in the back. Ma'am. Good evening.
Hi, Lori Davies, 493 English Rose Lane.
493.
Okay, I am the neighbors of Lahib and Ahmad, and they wonderful neighbors came about 4 years ago, and I know what he's talking about. Our backyards are very, very small. It's going to limit the amount of sunlight that we get into our backyards. We're getting more and more people coming to our community and retiring. And I think the size of it is too big for the size of our properties. It's very, very small.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your submission.
Thank you.
Is there any question of Ms. Davis before she leaves? I see none. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Khalidis, that this will be your opportunity to address the concerns of your neighbors.
I am very sorry that the neighbors are unhappy. I didn't realize that the owner hasn't really covered it with them. I leave it up to whatever the committee decides.
Okay, thank you, sir. Are there any further
you.
questions of Mr. Khalidis? I see none. So we'll take the matter into committee. I appreciate your submission, sir.
Thank you very much.
Gentlemen, I'm in your hands. You ready? Mr. Charlebois, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, having conducted my site visit and reviewed the applicant's written submission as well as the town's written submission, noting that the town is not in support. And also taking into account that we've had two people present here from the public in opposition to this particular request for variance, and listening to the applicant's agent with respect to his presentation, I don't see any other way but then to agree with the town and as my expert in this in terms of their points, which, just to repeat for the record here, that the requested increase in residential floor area ratio and decrease in the rear yard setback are not desirable for the appropriate development of the site, as it eliminates the available private amenity space, which we heard from two of the residents next door, in the rear yard and presents potential negative impacts onto abutting properties and is out of character with the neighborhood. So on that basis, I'm going to put forward a motion to deny this particular variance.
Thank you, Mr. Charlebois. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? Mr. Telawski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I find this application to be very similar to applications this committee has approved in the past and the town has supported. So when I looked at this, and particularly from an air photo perspective, the rear yard sunroom is incredibly in character with much of the neighborhood in terms of accessory buildings that have been built. And I do note that staff has addressed this in their report, and, you know, in one sense, I'd be inclined to suggest approving with a condition that no accessory building be constructed, but that would be very difficult to enforce given that accessory buildings under 100 square feet don't even need a building permit. But I think that goes to any application we deal with. We have to deal with the application that's in front of us, and any other application we approve may be considered at its limit, and they could then turn around and put an accessory building in. So I'm not swayed by that argument, and I can't support the motion because I think it'd be a decision inconsistent with very similar applications that this committee has approved, and I don't find it to be out of character or that a single story addition, sunroom addition, is going to take away sunlight.
Thank you, Mr. Telawski. Is there further discussion on this recommendation? I see none. Okay, the recommendation that is before us is to deny the application for the reasons that Mr. Charlebois stated. All those in support of the denial? All those in favor? All those opposed? I always do this. All those opposed? Okay, so 3 opposed. So the motion has failed. The motion to deny has failed. Now we are going to need a new motion. I suppose, Mr. Telawski, you'd like to do the honors?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I will obviously move that this application be approved as applied for. Find that it meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act. I won't restate all my reasons, but suffice to say, I don't see this causing an impact. I believe it is consistent with the housing in the neighborhood given the prevalence of other accessory structures. And I'm not convinced that sunlight will be an issue as stated by the residents. So I would move approvals subject to the development proceeding in general accordance with the drawings provided and a permit issue within 2 years.
Thank you, Mr. Telawski, and we do note the opposition of the neighbors. All those in support of approving the application? Okay, all those opposed? Mr. Charlebois is opposed. Sir, your application has been approved.
Thank you very much.
Nothing, I haven't been voting. Okay, so the next. I'm sorry, sir. It's the application has been passed, and we've rendered our decision. There is a sheet in the back if you desire to make an appeal. That will be your opportunity to further address the issue. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
So we are looking at CAV 084 of 2018 at 1030 Truman Avenue. Mr. Kieran.
Good evening, Madam Chairperson, members of the committee. My name is Joris Kieran. Kieran Design in Oakville, 100 Bronte Road, Unit 10, and I'm the agent for the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Kieran. Who is here for application CAV 084 of 2018 at 1030 Truman Avenue? Sir, you are? The owner. You are the owner. Thank you. So there's no one here that wishes to address the committee. Okay. Mr. Kieran, this is a new two-story home proposed. We've all done our site visits. We're familiar with the application and the condition that staff has recommended approval. I assume you are in agreement with those conditions?
I am.
Thank you, sir. Do you have anything further to add, or are you prepared for us to take this into committee?
I'm prepared to hand it over to the committee.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kieran. Are there any questions of Mr. Kieran at this time? I see none. Okay. Gentlemen, it's in your hands. Mr. Kieran has given it to us. Mr. Hardcastle, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having reviewed the materials provided, including the staff report, I am satisfied that the requested variances conform to the four tests of the Act. I'll put forward a motion of approval. The motion of approval would be subject to two conditions. The first being that the proposed dwelling be constructed in general accordance with the plans dated May 2018 as submitted, and the second being that the approval will expire within 2 years of the date of the decision if a permit has not been issued. I would note that there were no members of the public present. However, we did, there were no members of the public present with respect to this matter.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support of the approval? Okay, the application has been approved. Thank you, Mr. Kieran.
Thank you.
Okay, we are looking at CAV 085 at 317 Wedgwood Drive.
Madam Chair,
good evening,
William
Mr.
Hicks with
Hicks.
Hicks Design Studios again. Prepared to make an submission to the committee. I'm not sure if any neighbors are here. I've not heard from any. I know planning supports the application.
Let's see. Mr. Hicks, CAV 085 of 2018 at 317 Wedgwood Drive. Is there any here for this application? Okay, I see none. It's all clear, Mr. Hicks. So, again, the presentation is not necessary. You can do so if you desire. We have familiarized ourselves with the application, done our site visits. This is an application for a new development of a two-story home proposed.
Yes.
Staff is in support, and they do have a recommendation attached to that support. You're familiar with it, and you're
We are. We
okay with
support
it?
that recommendation, that condition. So.
Very well. Mr. Hicks, if you have nothing further to add, we are prepared to take this matter into committee.
Nothing that I think will change the committee's opinions.
Thank you. Okay, gentlemen, who is ready to move a motion? Ian, are you? Yeah. Okay.
All right, Madam Chair, I'll grab it again. Again, having conducted my site visit, reviewed the applicant's written submission as well as the town's written staff report, noting that the town is in support, and taking into account that we've had no comments from the public this evening, either in written form or orally, I'm prepared to make a motion that this particular variance be accepted as presented, subject to two conditions. The proposed dwelling be constructed in general accordance with the plans dated May 10th, 2018 and submitted. And further, it's subject to the condition the approval will expire 2 years from the date of this decision if the proposed development does not proceed or a building permit is not issued.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Charlebois. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Hicks. So the next application on the roster tonight is CAV 086 of 2018 at 2015 Duncan Road.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, my name is David Capper with Glenn Schnarr & Associates. Our mailing address is Unit 700 at 10 Kingsbridge Garden Circle, Mississauga, Ontario, L5R3K6.
Thank you, Mr. Capper. Is there any here in attendance for CAV 086 of 2018 at 2015 Duncan Road? I see none. Okay. Mr. Capper, we are in your hands. The application for this new development, should you desire, you can take us through the presentation. We are familiar with... Are there any questions for Mr. Capper at this time? No, I see none.
Madam Chair, I'm in your hands. I'm prepared to make a presentation. As soon as there's no questions, I'd be happy to move on.
I don't see any questions, and I think we are familiar with the application. We're satisfied with the notes that staff has provided. They are in support. They do have a condition on hand for us, and I am assuming that you're familiar with it and you accept it.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, I do.
Okay, very well. If you have nothing further to add, we are prepared to take this matter into committee.
Okay.
Very well. Gentleman, who's ready to move a motion? Mr. Telawski, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'll move this application be approved as applied for, finding that it meets the four tests of the Planning Act and that this relatively modest increase in floor area, I believe, is mitigated by the design of the dwelling. And I will note that there was no opposition from the public. I would make that approval subject to a building permit issuing within 2 years, and that the development proceed in accordance with the final approved site plan to the satisfaction of the director.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Telawski. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Very well. The application has been approved. Thank you,
Thank you
Mr.
very much.
Capper.
Have a good night.
Good night. CAV 087 of 2018 at 225 Village Wood Road. Good evening, sir. Your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Michael Mills, Mills Design Build, 224 Village Wood Road, Oakville.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Mills. Who is here for application CAV 087 of 2018 at 225 Village Road? Okay,
I
are you in
represent the owner,
opposition?
David
That's the
Maurice.
owner, thank you. And I saw another hand up. No? Okay. So there's no one else in the room? Okay, very well. Good evening, Mr. Mills. This is a second story addition and porch extension. We've done our site visits. We are familiar with your application, and if you have nothing further to add, this is your time. You can use it as you wish. Are there any questions of Mr. Mills? I see none. If you're satisfied with the condition that staff has provided for us, then we are ready to take this matter into committee.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, very well. So, gentlemen, Mr. Hardcastle, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having reviewed the materials, undertaken my site visit, I'm satisfied that the requested variances conform to the four tests of the Act. I'll put forward a motion of approval subject to conditions. First being that the proposed additions be constructed in general accordance with the plans as submitted, and the second being that the approval will expire within 2 years of the date of the decision if a permit has not been issued. I would note that there were no members of the public present to speak to this matter.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Is there discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, sir, your application has been approved. Thank you. CAV 088 of 2018 at 1394 Lakeshore Road East. Oh, Mr. Hicks.
And back again,
I guess
Madam
this is your
Chairman.
last one.
This is the last one for the evening. Again, I'm not sure if there's any residents here tonight, but I know planning is in support of part of the application, but not in support of the other.
Yes, sir, and we will like to hear your presentation. Let me just canvass the room. Who is here for CAV 088 at 1394 Lakeshore Road East? Hi. Are you the owner or?
No.
You are the owner. Anyone else, whether in opposition or support? No, I see none. Mr. Hicks, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. So I'm not going to talk about, there's 7 variances. I think planning has said they're in support of the skylight, which is a minor variance, certainly. The maximum and minimum front yards, which is a little bit of a technical issue given the existing house that's on the site. And the height, which really only applies to a small portion of the roof. So I'll certainly address that to the committee if they have any questions. But I want to talk about the other 3 variances which planning is not supporting, all of which relate to the garage and the garage projection and the maximum depth of the house. So, but just briefly, I'd like to discuss the lot. It's somewhat unique. It's bound by streets on 2 sides, so it doesn't have any other houses adjacent to it facing Lakeshore. It's a deep lot. It's heavily treed in the sides. It's more or less invisible from some of the side properties. You can still see parts of the house. The existing house on the site is far from what I might have deemed to be a desirable house in terms of the design that one has found for it. So certainly our client's intent was to remove that house, even though it is a substantial house, and replace it with what they think is a more desirable house. Current house is a full 2-story house, and it does have a large projecting garage, and certainly in this the drawing that's on the bottom of this site plan shows the amount of projection of the garage. It projects, our application says 9 meters, that's in front of the front porch. It actually projects about 12 meters in front of the main wall of the house itself. So briefly, I know we only have 5 minutes. What are we not asking for? We're only at about 60% of the maximum floor area allowed on the site. We're just over 50% of what's allowed as coverage on the site, and our side yards are substantial. You're required 4.2, so we're 8.4 in total, and we're just under 12 meters in terms of our total side yard. So the 3 variances relate to the garage size, which is 70.55 meters. As you know, I've been before the committee many times. It's a fairly common variance for a 3-car garage. In this case, we've decidedly made it a tandem garage so that it is less obtrusive to the street and presents less garage doors. Certainly because we're well under the allowable gross floor area on the site, we could elect to call part of it storage space and reduce it to meet the bylaw requirements, but we'd rather show you what they're asking for because they do have a tandem space on the one side. The garage projection's the second variance, and just to show you, bylaw requires a maximum of 1.5 meters for the projection, so on this drawing, but that's measured from the main front wall of the house, so which is really measured from this point. We are at 2.81, I believe, but if you look at the front porch, which wraps across the entire face of the house, we're actually less than the 1.5 meters, which becomes a dominant piece of the house in terms of looking at it. The solution to that, which I think is less desirable, is that I make it a 3-car side-by-side garage because we do have excess side yards on the property, which is going to get rid of the garage projection issue so that we could comply, but in my opinion it's going to present a less desirable solution in terms of its streetscape impact because you're going to see 3 garages from the street. And then if we come to the last item, which is building depth, we're asking for 26.52 meters. The existing house has approximately 23.4 or 23.45 meters already. We're asking for an increase in that. The bylaw limits you to 20 meters. It actually limits you to 23 meters if you have only a 1-story projection at the back of the house. So in this drawing, we do have a 1-story porch. Actually, this whole piece of the house is 1-story through here. So we're really seeking a variance for a portion of covered porch at the back plus the shaded area that exists there. Again, if I change the garage to a 3-car garage side by side, I would most likely still require a minor variance, but it would be for the building depth, but it would be less than what the existing house is proposing. So I respectfully, I guess, disagree with the comments from planning is that it's not desirable and doesn't meet the intent of the some of the urban design guidelines or the design guidelines, because I think I can get rid of the variances and have a less desirable house on the site. The other thing it would do if I take that garage, if you see on here, if I simply add a piece there and make that the 3rd car space, the 2nd floor actually starts at this point, so it's going to present a full 2-story face to the street as opposed to a 1.5-story look which has a dormer built into it right now. That again to me is adding extra mass at the street. It's reducing the side yards on the property and in my opinion provides a less desirable solution. I think the neighbor across the street has suggested that he's satisfied with it. I have not heard from any of the neighbors adjacent to the property. So with that, Madam Chair and members, I'll leave it open to questions that you may have.
Are there any questions of Mr. Hicks at this time? Mr. Telawski, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Hicks, your idea with a 3-car face to the garage, which I agree with you, would not necessarily be desirable, but you could get a 3-car garage and not need a variance to the size of the garage, is that correct?
Yes. Yes, because I would call a portion of it storage at the back, attach it to the house, and I wouldn't need a variance for the gross floor area, and I wouldn't need any side yard variances either. So.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions?
Excuse me, I'm the neighbor. Can I speak to?
Sorry, didn't she say she was the owner?
I thought she did, but I know she's not the owner, but.
No,
so-
I'm one of the neighbors.
Oh, okay, sorry, I didn't understand that. Ma'am, if you wish to address the committee, you can, and that's why we canvass the room so that you can tell us whether you would like to address the committee in opposition or in support. I guess I misunderstood when you said I am the owner. So please come down and we'll invite you to address the committee, and then we'll give Mr. Hicks a chance to respond to your concerns. So how can we help you tonight? First, I'd need your name and your address for the record.
My name is Hannelore Reimer, and I'm on 1400 Lakeshore Road East.
Ryman, you said?
Reimer, yeah.
Yes, okay.
Now, I don't understand all the plan completely. There was a small house when we bought the property 26 years ago. Then they built a bigger house. And what they did were the garage, I'm sorry, I don't know exactly.
It's okay, ma'am. You can just address the committee, and then we will try and get you all the information you need.
The main concern I have, because I have a bungalow, and that goes all the way on the side of the house. So there is, when they rebuilt the house, they put already the garage closer to my backyard. So my backyard, I don't know how big, it's very narrow. And they're having some trees there, but the previous owner constantly cut. But now since 2 years, they moved out, nobody cut the trees, and they go all into my property, and that is my backyard, because I have a bungalow along the whole side. And when they built the house, rebuilt it, they showed me 3 windows on the map. And then it was approved, and when they built the house, and somebody came approved it again, all of a sudden I had, instead of 3 windows, I had 5 windows. So I don't want to go through the whole thing now again. I want to make sure that I have that exactly in front of me, what is approved or not. And also, I don't know, I hear from your garage, I do not want that coming closer
once again, just address the committee so we can record your submissions,
Yeah.
and then we will get you all the information.
I would not like that they come closer to my property line, because the property line there is all my backyard, and I have quite a big property, but still my backyard is facing that big monster of a house, and it becomes now even bigger. What I really don't mind, except I would not like more windows on my side, and I do not want, because it's a way bigger house, an air conditioner. I have now there an air conditioner. I hardly can sit in my backyard because it's so noisy. Now it's becoming a bigger house, and I'm afraid I get even more air conditioning. So I would like that whatever they do, I do not get any more air conditioning, and they do not come closer to the property line.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. We will get Mr. Hicks to comment on all your concerns, the property line issue, the tree line issue, and the windows issue.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Thank you. No, maybe you can explain me that.
Madam Chair, to respond to some of the concerns of our adjacent neighbor, I can say that the new house is slightly further from the property line than the existing house. It also, as you see on this plan, it's pushed back somewhat. I know the narrowest part of her property is up in that section, the northern part of it. We've actually pushed the house back, which will actually open up her backyard a little bit more. With respect to the air conditioning units, we have no problem with saying there's no air conditioning units on that side. We have a much more substantial side yard on the opposite side of the property anyway. And with regards to the trees, I think we've had a substantial landscape plan prepared for the property. We're certainly happy to work with the adjacent neighbor to talk about pruning trees, cutting trees, changing trees, and obviously going through the arborist reports and the requirements for the town. But and certainly this side of the house facing that property really is the garage, a staircase on the upper floor, and a studio sort of guest suite at the back of the house. So there's limited windows facing her house, but I am prepared to meet with her and show her those types of things, but I know that any decision would probably be attached to these drawings at any rate. So if I came back to following the route of adding a third car garage, I'm probably going to back to the 4.2 meter side yard that's existing right now, which is a minor difference from what we're showing, but the house would get wider in the opposite direction on the site. So she did not seem to have any concerns with the size of the property. It was more related to the edge conditions and visual privacy. So I think, in my opinion, we still meet that intent, and I believe it's the better and the more desirable solution to be presented and put on this property. So.
Very well, thank you. So just for Ms. Ryman's benefit, after the proceedings, he can show you in more detail and you can exchange information and talk about the hedging. But I believe that he's answered all your concerns. Okay.
And I know...
It does not go, the house will not go close to my property.
No, Mr. Hicks just explained that they've pushed the house back, so you're actually going to have more space in that portion of your property that's closest to the house. Okay, you're welcome. So are there any questions of Mr. Hicks at this time? Okay, I see none. Mr. Hicks, if you have nothing further to add, we're prepared to take this matter into committee.
That's fine, Madam Chair. So.
Okay, thank you, sir. Gentlemen, is there a recommendation for this? And we do have letters of support on hand. One, actually, yes.
Yes.
All right, Madam Chair.
Certainly, Mr. Charlebois, go ahead.
Thanks. Having conducted my site visit, reviewed the applicant's written submission as well as the town's staff submission, noting that the staff is not in support, but also taking into account the applicant's oral submission here as well as the comments from the public. I'm of the opinion that Mr. Hicks has made a reasonable argument with respect to the particular variances that the staff sought to deny. And based on his entire discussion, but primarily the idea that this is a large site, the setbacks are generous, and the coverage is well below, both in terms of land coverage as well as building itself, below the minimums. I'm prepared to accept these particular variances as presented, finding they do meet the 4 tests on the Planning Act, making it subject to the condition that the building be constructed in general accordance with the drawings as submitted, and further that subject to the condition the approval will expire 2 years from the date of this decision, the proposed development does not proceed or a building permit is not issued.
Very well, thank you, Mr. Charlebois. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? Mr. Telawski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to echo my colleague, I came here quite prepared to not like this application, and I think Mr. Hicks did an excellent job of explaining how the variances in context of what he's trying to achieve actually produce a better result than what could otherwise be achieved if he complied with the bylaw, and that we're really just looking at a 1.2 meter projection beyond the porch. 2 doors instead of 3 doors facing the street is always better in my mind, and that the additional depth is just 3 meters deeper in the existing building and just a single story. With respect, I listened to the residents' concerns. I don't believe they directly related to any of the variances being requested, but again, I thought Mr. Hicks adequately addressed those concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Telawski. Any further discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support of the approval? Yes, the application has been approved. Thank you, Mr. Hicks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm done for the evening.
Yes. Just our general condition. Okay, CAV 089 of 2018 at 158 Castle Crescent. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Peter Giordano. I'm here on behalf of David Small Designs. We are the authorized agents for the owners at 158 Castle Crescent.
So do you have a business card, sir? Because we don't have your...
I'll give you the business address. It's 1440 here, Ontario Street, Mississauga, L5G 3H4.
Okay. Giordano's, sorry.
Giordano, Giordano.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Giordano. Who's here for application CAV 089 of 2018 at 158 Castle Crescent? Very well. You're in opposition or in support? Support. You're in support. We do have a number of letters of support, I believe 11. And you are? Yeah, I'm a neighbor. You are in opposition. Okay. Did you submit a letter of objection? So we have that on record. Very well. Thank you. Okay. Mr. Giordano, as you know, the town staff is not in support of your application. So for the benefit of the committee and everyone in attendance, I would like you to go through your presentation, and then we'll give the neighbors a chance to address the committee.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
Madam Chair and committee members, our proposal is designed for the property that starts with the removal of the ground floor and the second floor. The basement is being retained, all 4 walls, concrete foundation walls. The use of the existing foundation walls are both a cost-effective and site-sensitive method of retaining front yard, side yard, and rear yard setbacks. The ground floor platform will be rebuilt, retaining the modest 7'10" basement height. And it remains and with the current rear yard basement walkout and the existing pool. We're rebuilding the traditional ground floor and second floor with a fresh and current layout, adding 2 additional feet to the ground floor. We meet the current market expectations of height for the ground floor. The second floor is only 8 feet. There's a section of the second floor. Second floor has a master bedroom that has a ceiling of 9. Overall, we're proposing a building that is in fact lower than the existing building that's there. So the red lines indicate the existing structure that's there, and what we're proposing is replacing it with a new building. Now, this section of the lower floor is the basement level. That's the ground floor, and that's the second floor. This is a rear walkout condition to the rear. It has a finished rear patio area with a pool, and we are retaining the pool. The home itself, effectively with the new design, we are creating a condition where we are maintaining the front yard setback, the rear yard setback, the side yard setbacks. We're conforming with building height. If this house is considered a traditional house, ground floor and second floor, we conform with those 2 floor areas in total. We conform in coverage as well. The aspect of this home that makes it different is the fact that the side yard setback, or sorry, the side yard grades, as the grade drops down on the sides, the relationship of the exposure of the foundation walls on the rear forces the basement to be used or to be included in the floor area. Just by definition, the basement is now considered the first floor. The ground floor is considered the second, so the second floor is considered the third. That's the fundamental aspect of this set of variances. They're all connected. The fact that the definition calls the current second floor of the house now a third floor makes us not conform to that bylaw. Everything is a repercussion of that. So the platform that walks from the kitchen, from the ground floor, down to grade on the rear is now fundamentally considered a platform from the second floor. I find that to be a little unreasonable. What we're doing is maintaining the condition of the rear walkout. We don't have support from planning, but part of the rationale is that we have an existing non-conforming condition. That would be due to the fact that the basement is included as total floor area. We suggest that what we're proposing here is to rebuild the house on existing foundations. We're not going to change grade. We're not going to affect drainage. We're not going to affect neighbors because of the grade or drainage. We're building on top of existing foundation walls, like I said, retaining all of our setbacks. And as a result, we're conforming in all respects other than the fact that the basement area is included as a floor area. We have support from neighbors. The support we have, we had 11 letters. One was withdrawn. I understand there's a residential association that has a reason to not support this application. I'm not sure they understand. We haven't had an opportunity to talk to them, but I'm not sure they understand the fact that what's being applied for here is effectively the ground floor and the second floor as a conventional structure, and just the fact that the basement is raised out of the ground a little higher. It's the reason why the 4 variances are part of this application.
So your name and address for the record,
Sure.
please?
Yeah. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Rachel Yi-Wee-So at 143 Castle Crescent.
Sorry, your last name again?
So.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So I do agree with the start comment that I'm actually in opposition of the application. And here's the reason. So the proposed increase in the floor level, meaning the exterior window is going to be higher, and also along with the new 3-story extension beyond the garage, that really impact loss of privacy in my daughter's bedroom, in a kitchen, and a dining. So I can, to see it visually, I do have a picture of that. Basically, yeah, it's kind of difficult for us. We're good neighbors. I do not want to oppose, but from our perspective, it's difficult as just the fact that if you look at the, So if you look at the current setting here, where the windows right now, after the proposed structure is going to be higher with the window, as well, that would be a new 3-story structures extended beyond the garage. We would drive closer to my property line, understand the setback, but just the height itself, it really do impact privacy on my dwelling place. So that, and also we really magnify the whole massing impact from the back. As you can see, it really overlooks the surrounding properties, elimination of some of the privacy that we used to have. It's difficult. If you see it from the front end, it's hard to see, but from the rear side, as a result of the grading, it really do impact. So basically, it's a 3-story structures, like we're facing a 3-story structure behind in the building. So again, privacy is my main concern here. I do understand the grading. The neighbors actually could reach out and talk to us about that, but to me, it's really difficult for us having a 3-story structure extend beyond the garage. And I'm not sure I'm interpreting the bylaw right, so I do see the point of the first story really, like definition, I'm not sure interpreting the bylaw, like first story should be 1.8 meter above ground. And if I look at the structure itself, like I did a little bit of research, try to see, if I look at the drawing here, as you can see, just maybe too small. So the extended structure beyond the garage currently is 2.3. I'm not sure interpreting it right. Like, so the according to the bylaw, it should be 1.8. So the first story really level with a first story. It's the result, unfortunately, with the grading. So it does impact a privacy because the extension beyond the garage and having a 3-story where the window is going to be higher than the current setting. So I do want to point out that that's a lot of letter of support actually from the street side, but the neighbors actually at the rear side of the property are greatly impacted by the 3-story structure. So I didn't see a lot of support coming, like properties, like neighbors from the rear sides of the property. And yeah, so considering all that, currently it's considered to be a legal non-compliant 3-story building, and on top, like with the extension, the 3-story extension, it's not a foundation, it's a new foundation that they currently have, and currently it's just a deck, so it's actually extending beyond their current footprint. Like it's difficult for us, like if we look at the pictures, like just impacting the privacies and a little bit of sunlight, but privacy is my main concern. So I did talk to the owner about that. I haven't heard back, so just want to open up some room to discuss. And for now, like I do not consider all these variants are minor. Like it really do impact my lifestyle, and I have 2 young daughters too. So just privacy again is my main concern, and the massing impact. Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. So, for your submission. Are there any questions of Ms. So at this time?
Just leave her drawing.
Ms. So, your picture and your drawings need to be the picture, not the picture.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
It just goes in our records.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Sir, would you like to address the committee? Were you here for this application?
Yeah.
Are you in opposition or in support?
Opposition.
Okay, please come down and provide your name and address for the record. I guess I missed you because I did canvass the room.
No, I didn't put my hand up. I wanted to see the presentations.
Oh,
and then,
very well. Okay.
John Hillis.
Hillis,
and it's,
Mr. Hillis.
185 Shabukto Drive, but I'm representing Joshua Creek Residents Association.
Oh, yes, okay. He's at 185 Chabakto. He's representing the Residents Committee.
So I guess we support planning's decision here, or planning's recommendation here. I guess the variances requested on their face really are, we haven't been in here and seen a 2nd floor balcony ever approved, and I'm not sure why we would start now or with a 3rd floor. There is a privacy issue. I hear that the height is lower or the same, but in fact the windows are actually raised up, and so with the grade that creates a privacy issue, and you've got a full 2nd floor balcony on that. So I do think there are issues on that, and we would support planning's recommendation not to support these variances.
Okay. Are there any questions of Mr. Ellis? I see none. Okay. Mr. Jordan, it's your turn to address the concerns that you've heard, sir.
I'd like to show you the so this is a map of the neighborhood. The subject property is this section right in here. We have support of all of the neighbors in red. This property have renters in them, so they weren't there, they weren't available. The lady that spoke is in this house over here. These two properties on either side are members of the Residents Association, and they've been asked to not provide letters, although our clients were told by the neighbor on the other side of them that although they couldn't provide a letter, they were in support of the application. So this is the map that shows the support that we have. A lot of what's being said, again, is referencing the second floor as the third floor. They're calling the ground floor where the platform is coming off. They're saying a balcony off the second floor. Again, so it's all about semantics. And I guess the issue that I have with it is that we did a quick study of the property, and if you take the existing house, and if we were to option to adjust grade on the front here, and if we were to take the side elevations and tweak the grade on the side elevations, in this case, it would be this red line. And the rear doesn't have to change, it's a rear walkout. So just by nature, the fact that it's a rear walkout, we wouldn't actually be changing anything at all about the rear. Again, it presents itself as a 3-story because it's a basement walkout. The other side of the lot, again, if we adjust grade to match that line, we're not here today. We don't have a variance. We conform with the average grade calculation. I've confirmed that with a gentleman in zoning. It then allows the it allows the basement to not be included in floor area. It redefines the ground floor as the ground floor, second floor as the second floor, and everything goes away. We find that if we were forced to put armor stone around the property, we have wide side yards. We can develop armor stone around the house, raise grade, get our swales running to the back. Drainage is front to back, so we have to retain drainage. I don't think it's advisable. We don't think it's the intent or the essence of the neighborhood to try to make the grade work to force this to happen. But if we were to apply this principle to the application, it would then comply. That's why I find the request for making it legal nonconforming, and the reason why it shouldn't apply is because it doesn't comply as a result of what we're showing here. If what they're suggesting is that we should remove the basement walls, what the lady, the neighbor had said, we're using all of the existing walls in the basement. It's this little extension at the rear, which on the site plan. So on the site plan, this is the only section of the house that's being built new, and this is the section that she's suggesting would overlook her property. There's currently a deck there on the upper level that overlooks the property. We would just be extending what's there, but again, we conform to side yard, rear yard, coverage, GFA, building height. I don't like the concept that trying to bring it into conformance by removing removing the basement and pushing it 3 feet further into the ground. So now if they're going to access their pool in their rear yard, they have to walk up. And if they want to access it from the upper floor, they have to walk down. That would be the intent, to bring the building back into, remove the legal nonconforming aspect of the building. We don't see that being better or, in character with the neighborhood. We find that what we're doing is removing part of the building that's there and replacing it with something more current.
Very well, thank you, Mr. Jordan. Are there any questions for Mr. Jordan at this time? And your evidence needs to go to the Secretary Treasurer. Yeah.
Yep.
Any questions? Mr. Charlebois.
I'll just wait.
Yeah. That's the 3D. So that. I think that's it. No, I didn't show that. No.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
I do have a question for you, sir.
Sure.
You make a lot of good arguments with respect to this thing, and as you've said, it all hinges around a technical definition of what's a first floor. How much, based on that, how much discussion did you have with the town prior to putting in this proposal as to see if you could get their support or what could be done?
We didn't, because we were working with the existing basement. Excuse me. We were retaining those walls. We were assuming it to be a basement, a ground floor, and a second floor. We went in for our site alteration process. We went all the way through, met all of the site alteration issues, basically got a site alteration clearance. We went into for zoning. Unfortunately, because we weren't anticipating a variance, we didn't find out about this requirement until it got to zoning, and it was flagged at that point. We have our clients that are with us here today, and they moved out of their house in preparation for the new construction. We found that there was an opening for today's date on the committee, but we had to apply that afternoon. We applied that afternoon, got this spot, which meant that we didn't have the opportunity to review it with planning or meet with any neighbors that had any concerns.
Okay. My second question is, I thought I heard you say that if you could just show me that again, that most of the basement actually does comply, but only a portion of it didn't. Can you explain that part again?
Sure. Perfect. So, yeah, most municipalities take the definition that defines basement from an established grade line. And Oakville takes the established grade line as the grade at the center point at the front lot line. In this scenario, the calculation that determines whether or not the basement is above or below grade is an average grade calculation that gets taken all the way around. So it's a series of points times the building length, and that determines what the average grade number is. Whenever you have a walkout condition, and that entire rear walkout condition is at grade, and you have a front yard, it's virtually impossible to get a point that connects at the front and the back on a diagonal to get you to a point where you're going to have the 1.8 meter clearance to allow the basement to conform. What I'm suggesting in these diagrams is by adding armor stone along the front, one layer armor stone to raise grade along the front, to do the same thing along the sides. I'll show you on this diagram here. So if we were to take armor stone, where you see it in green, and wrap it all the way around like that, and do the same thing like that, our grade conditions up against the house will now force our average grade all the way around the house up, and will meet the criteria of the basement qualifying as a basement, and the zoning requirement, the variances would go away. That's where we suggest that, we could force grade up on these areas. We can still get drainage and swales along the side, front to back drainage. It's not going to present the neighbors with anything different from the way of sight lines. It's not going to improve their condition. If anything, it's going to make it worse, because now they have to stare at a series of armor stone and raised grade.
All right, thank you.
Are there any further questions of Mr. Jordan? I see none. Okay. Mr. Jordan, if you have nothing further to add, we can take this matter into committee. I'll just give them a moment to get their thoughts together.
It's all yours.
I have a question of planning. So if this is a legal non-conforming, sorry, no, that's not what I meant to say, an existing non-conforming situation, so what would you have the applicant do in terms of a design? I mean, the grading is going to stay the grading as it is. There's always going to be a situation where there's a walkout basement as the existing house shows right now. So what are your thoughts on that? And I sympathize with him because I see those walkout houses everywhere, and if it's a minute difference that we're talking about.
Through you, Madam Chair, the simple answer is the applicant has chosen to maintain the basement. That's an option. That's not the be-all or end-all of making a decision of redeveloping this property. So should the applicant choose to redevelop the property, they're losing their legal non-compliant status with respect to the way that the stories are being referenced with the new bylaw in place. The house could be redesigned. They could dig deeper rather than elevate the house in terms of how those stories would be provided. It's a choice that they're making based on this particular design. The applicant could also have spoken with staff to discuss the application and hear some suggestions or work with staff to look at some alternatives. That never happened. So staff are commenting on the application that we have before us. A third story, based on the language of the bylaw, is prohibited. So though the applicant has a property that has a legal non-compliant element, they are removing that, and it's their obligation to ensure that they comply with the bylaw going forward for new development.
Okay, thank you for your comments. I didn't see you there, sorry, go ahead.
Madam Chair, I find that I have to conclude that this is really, when you boil it down, a very technical variance.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And is not what it appears on the surface when you read the actual variances being requested. And not to put words in the applicant's mouth, but if he weren't to get this variance, he could come back with a little more than elevated landscaping and creation of gardens adjacent to the foundation of the house, and he wouldn't need a variance. He wouldn't have been here. And I'll take him on face value that he believes the variance as opposed to armor stone retaining walls is a better solution. So, Madam Chair, I appreciate staff don't support this, but again, and not unlike the Lakeshore property, having listened, and that's why we have these meetings, to the applicant and the explanation, I am completely satisfied with the explanation that I've been given, that this is very much a technical matter, and on that basis, I do believe that the application conforms to the Hardcastle Planning Act. So I would move approval of the application subject to the two conditions: that development proceed in general accordance with the drawings provided, and that a building permit issue within 2 years. I will note, Madam Chair, that there was opposition to this application, and I'm satisfied that the proposal is not significantly different in terms of the overlook. Yes, I believe the windows are higher, but I don't believe it's significantly different than what exists there today. And Again, I think from the Residents Association, the impression I have, it's the variances on their face value were the concern, and when you boil it down to the technicality of the definition of what's a basement, I don't believe that there's merit in that position. So again, Madam Chair, I would recommend approval subject to the two conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Telawski. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? Mr. Hardcastle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to add that I looked at these variances very much when I was on site as on their face value, and delving in and hearing the explanation of the applicant has helped me appreciate the technical nature of this. And I would agree with my colleagues' comments here, and I'll be supporting that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Any further discussion on this recommendation? Okay, I see none. I too am inclined to agree with both of you. You've eloquently put it, so I will not reiterate any of your points. Let's take a vote. All those in support of the approval of this application? Okay, it's unanimous, sir. Your application has been approved.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee.
Thank you. Okay, our last application of the night is CAV 068 of 2018, deferred from May 8th of 2018, and this one is at 1383 Wren Avenue. And you have since then made some changes. This new development. Sir, good evening. Your name and address for the record?
Good evening. My name is Raid Rawi from Professional Floor Plans, 5147 Preservation Circle, Mississauga, Ontario, L5M74. I'm the agent for the owner of the property.
Okay. Sorry, can you?
Raid Al-Rawi.
Rawi, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone here for application CAV 068 of May 8th of 2018 at 1383 Wren Avenue? Okay, thank you. And sir, in the back, you are here in opposition or in support? In opposition. Very well. Mr. Rawi, we are aware that the town staff is in support of your application, and we'd like you to do the presentation and take us through the changes, perhaps since your deferral last, and then we'll give the gentleman in the back a chance to voice his concerns.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So basically, the reasons set for the minor variances is the nature of the property, the shape of the property, and its irregularity. And since the beginning, I mean, the concern of the designer was only to minimize these variances to the setbacks because of the shape of the property and because of the definition where is the frontage and where the rear yard. Unfortunately, during design development and during staff review, there have been issues related to the size of the garage and the floor area ratio. So we listened and we agreed with the staff that there is no need and there is no intention into that. So we asked for a deferral at the previous hearing, and now we're coming back only again with, we corrected the garage and the shape of the house to avoid the calculation of the extra floor area ratio or the garage size. So we are asking only for two minor variances. One is to permit a minimum rear yard of 2.41 in lieu of 3.5, and also to permit a minimum front yard of 5.53 in lieu of 6.56. We believe both are minor in nature, and I think the staff also agree with us. We understand it might cause some inconvenience to the neighbors, but we are minimizing its very minimal values, and we hope that it will not be affecting anyone adversely, and we will be more than happy to hear from them. Thank you.
Your name and address for the record?
My name is Brent Gorell, 1387 Wren Avenue. My wife and I own the property next door to 1383 Wren Avenue, where we have two children that live with us. To begin, I'd just like to say my wife and I are not opposed to new builds on the property. We recognize the changing dynamics of the area and expect tear downs and rebuilds to happen. However, our opinion is the requested variances on this application are not desirable for the appropriate development on 1383 Wren Avenue. We have 3 concerns that I would like to share with you this evening. So number 1, currently my wife and I when we look out our main front window, we cannot see neighbors to either side of our home. In fact, if this proposed build on 1383 Wren Avenue adhered to section 6.4.3A of the bylaw as written, we still would not have a visual of the new proposed home at 1383 Wren Avenue from our main front window. However, this application includes a request to permit an extra 1 meter beyond the minimum front yard requirements. If this variance were to be approved by this committee, the new proposed home would then be visible when my wife and I look out our main front window. This confirms to me that this is not a minor variance, and section 6.4.3A of the bylaw should be followed as written. By following it, it ensures the new dwelling maintains and protects the character of the neighborhood. And in this case, adhering to the bylaw would in fact do that, and our current view from our window would not change. I was going to take a picture, but that then becomes subjective on my measurements, so I would then challenge the committee members and staff to actually take measurements on the property, take it where the bylaw line is, take it where the proposed line is, and then take a look out my front window and see for themselves. I welcome anybody who wants to take me up on that challenge. My second concern is we request that the committee evaluate the comments submitted by staff on this, and our request is based on comparing the comments submitted by staff on the original drawings from the May 8th, 2018 committee meeting and the drawings for this revised application. Based on the changes to the revised plan, it is a little bit perplexing to understand the complete 180 shift in the staff's viewpoints on the revised application compared to the original, considering variants 1 and 2 have the most impact on protecting the character of the neighborhood. In fact, variance 1 on this revised application moved a mere 10 centimeters compared to the original application. Variance 2 did not change at all. Our point is there were 2 variances dropped from the original application, but they have 0 impact on the staff's original concern, which was, and I quote, increased massing along the streetscape. They also mentioned that this does not result in a dwelling that maintains and protects the character of the neighborhood, which it does not, as outlined in my first point. For this reason, the staff's comments strangely inconsistent, in my opinion at least, and therefore should be challenged by this committee in the decision-making process. Finally, our last point here is considering this is the first tear down and rebuild with a Wren Avenue address, this would be a precedent-setting decision by this committee. So if this committee decides to approve variances 1 and 2 on this application for 1383 Wren Avenue, then there would be no grounds that I can see that this committee, current or future members, can deny any future applications requesting the same variances for my property or, in that matter, any other property on Wren Avenue. Again, which would not protect the character of the neighborhood as it stands right now. So just to quickly recap, variance 2 we don't think is a minor variance if you follow section 6.4.3A of the bylaw, which ensures the new dwelling maintains and protects the character of the neighborhood. In this case, adhering to the bylaw would in fact protect that view from our front window as it stands right now. Number 2, we request that staff comments be challenged by this committee based on their somewhat inconsistent and subjective nature. And 3, this is seen as a precedent-setting decision for Wren Avenue. And if this application is approved, I would like reassurance that there would be no grounds for this committee to deny an application for the same variances on my property upon future development. Thank you for your time, and I will answer any questions the committee may have for me.
Sir, I just got one question for you with respect to your comment with respect to looking out your front door, or your front window, sorry. And I take it that's because the building is set back presently from
Right,
yours so that you
that's
can
correct,
see.
yes.
And this particular application brings that building in line with your building. It doesn't bring it forward.
Well, that's why I put in a challenge to you guys.
Yeah.
Basically, if you stake that out and you look out my front window, I'm not going by drawing, I'm going by actual measurements. And that's why I challenge the staff to maybe sometimes not look exactly at the drawings, but actually stake it out and see the impact it has.
I see. Okay, so that's what you're trying
That's
to say.
my
I just wanted
viewpoint
to
there,
confirm
yes.
that. Okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions? Okay, Mr. Hill, we'll give Mr. Rawi a chance to respond.
Great, thank you.
Go ahead, sir.
I mean, we recognize the neighbor concern and also the other neighbor concern, the neighbor in the back, because we are having two different opinions. The neighbor on the side yard, he doesn't want us to go forward, and the neighbor on the back side doesn't want us to go backwards because he has a garden, and I think they sent a letter in this regard. We talked to them after the deferral. So we respected both as much as we can. We didn't go beyond the existing neighbor set line so that we don't create any obstruction from our opinion. I mean, maybe he has a different opinion, but from our opinion, we are trying to respect as much as we can both neighbors, and we are minimizing the encouragement to both sides. Of course, it will not be the same as the previous small one-story house, so we understand there should be some inconvenience, but we still believe that this shouldn't be an issue, will not affect the neighbors. The owner is giving his promise that he will work with the neighbors throughout the process, make it as least inconvenience to everybody, and listen to them all the time, give his contacts, and reply to any concerns. And we'll look forward to have a nice new house proceedings in Wren Avenue, building for the future of the neighborhood and raising the value of the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rawi. Are there any further questions? Okay, we're going to take the matter into committee. Oh, I missed you. Sorry, Ms. Mihailovich, go ahead.
It's Mrs. Cockburn now. Thank you,
Oh,
Madam
I
Chair.
didn't get the memo. I didn't get the last name. I apologize. Welcome back, Mrs. Cockburn.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's going to be easier to pronounce than Mihailovich,
I
okay?
know.
I mean, Paul
It'll-
always massacred that.
It'll be so good. Madam Chair, thank you. Just for clarity, because there seems to be some confusion and perhaps staff's comments were not very clear. So just to clarify before committee makes a decision, the property is irregular, and due to the irregularity, it is a little difficult to tell, but Valley Drive is actually the frontage here on this property, and the front yard setback that's in question is actually to the porch at the back of the house. The variances are to address the orientation of the dwelling so that it is consistent with the streetscape, with the houses being oriented to Wren Avenue. In this particular case, should the applicant comply with the bylaw, they would further increase the side yard, but actually be able to extend as close as 3.5 meters to Wren Avenue, which would go beyond the front limit of the wall of the neighbor's property. Again, just for clarity to reorient the issue here, the variance for front yard setback is actually along Valley Drive. The variance for rear yard setback is the yard that would be abutting the garage here and abutting the neighboring property. There just seemed to be some confusion as to where front yard was being measured from, and I wanted to provide that clarity. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. I hope that provided you with some clarity. No, I spoke out of turn in the sense that I'm addressing you, but we are taking this matter into committee now. Who is ready with the motion? Mr. Hardcastle, thank you.
Madam Chair, the comments from staff are very helpful in terms of understanding really what is going on here. The ultimately, the variances are not really affecting the siting of the house relative to the Wren frontage. And that is the comment, the single biggest comment from the neighbor is the effect that the development of this lot would have on his sight lines out of the property and out of his property, as well as the character of the area. And with respect to the character of the area, I think the residential floor area ratio variance has been dropped from this proposal, bringing it more in line with what the zoning would envision for the area and permit for the area. With those comments said, and highlighting the irregular nature of this lot, it really is a challenging lot with its different interpretation of yards, and the actual shape of the lot makes it a bit of a challenge to site a house on. I think that the owner has done a great job and the architect has done a great job in terms of compromising with programmatical requirements and meeting the challenges of this lot under the zoning and the configuration of it. So with that being said, I do agree with staff, and I'll put forward a motion of approval of the application, subject to two conditions. The first being that the proposed dwelling be constructed in general accordance with the plans dated May 9th, 2018 as submitted, and the second being that the approval expire within 2 years of the date of the decision if a permit has not been issued. I do note that there was a resident present who spoke to this matter, as well as there are correspondence provided with respect to this matter as well.
Thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved. So we have no minutes to approve this evening. So if everyone is in agreement, motion for adjournment. Mr. Hardcastle moves for adjournment, and we are adjourned at 9:04.